and welcome to Rise to Liberty. I got Jason Bassler on the show today, and we are only streaming to DLive and Odyssey because right at the last minute, YouTube decided to slam my channel with a community guidelines strike, which I have appealed as of this morning at around about an hour ago. So we'll see how long it takes them to get back to me. They said I had hateful content, which out of all the things I've put out on my channel, the one that they striked, it's amazing to me. I'm like, okay, there's many more things that they could strike, and it's amazing. So how you doing, Jason? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing well, and sorry to hear about this strike. I'll keep my fingers crossed that they actually do respond to your appeal, because that's apparently an option too, is they just don't respond.
Yeah. It's crazy. So you are the co-founder of the Free Thought Project and the founder of Police the Police, which is kind of like been your big projects. Kind of want to talk about that a little bit, and just kind of what you guys have been through over the past few years.
Absolutely, brother. Yeah, man. So started Police the Police back in 2012. I had kind of a awakening during the Occupy Wall Street movement. And I was doing stuff prior to that. I've always been involved with social media. In fact, I was on like Friendster back in like 2003. I was doing protests for the Iraq War and stuff. But around 2011, I realized that I had all this information, at my fingertips. In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. It kind of just dawned on me that, hey, like, what am I waiting for? Now it's my turn to kind of get involved with all this and try to learn as much as I could. So that's what I did. And during the Occupy Wall Street movement, I saw a lot of brutality, a lot of police violence, and it just didn't sit right with me. I've never actually dealt with any type of personal police violence, but that was enough to inspire me and motivate me to create Police to Police in 2012. And basically, it's just an online organization that documents and archives police brutality, police misconduct, and police abuse of authority. And in 2013, a year later or so, I met up with Matt Agrist, who is also the Free Thought Project co-founder and editor-in-chief. And we created the Free Thought Project. And that project has been more based on just like government accountability, dabbling in some conspiracy theories, trying to end the drug war, counterintuitive information. Hopefully people listening to this right now are familiar with it. We've been around for a while now. But as I was mentioning to you, Jacob, before we started the show, we actually hit a rough patch in 2018 when we lost nearly 6 million fans when Facebook and Twitter both took down both of our pages, both of our accounts, amongst other pages, all on the same day, within hours of each other. So it was quite the life trajectory changer. I had just bought a house, first time I've ever owned a house, and I thought I had a little bit of stability. After 5 years of building millions of fans under this umbrella with different networks and organizations and pages and whatnot. So, it's been a rocky road since then, but we're still in it. We're not going to go anywhere. As you can see, I'm wearing my Meme War veteran hat today to represent, because I have some street cred when it comes to that. So, but happy to be on here with you. And I'd love to talk about censorship, big tech. I mean, anything really, anything in the news cycle.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's crazy because I remember following you guys a long time ago. By the way, I've got to say, the Free Thought Project, some of the most based memes I think I've ever seen. Just always coming out, even still. Like, I still follow you guys, like, on Telegram and Instagram and stuff, and still some of the best memes I think I've ever seen. They just hit home.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I've hit a little bit of a slump lately. I don't know. It's one of those creative things, you hit like a wall after a while of doing it. So I've been kind of trying to do other stuff. I've been doing more videos, just putting myself in front of the camera for like my Instagram account and Twitter and stuff. But I mean, I love memes. Memes are kind of the lifeblood of the internet. So I'm not going to ever stop. But I felt like maybe it's time just to switch it up a little bit, do some other stuff.
Well, and plus, it's a different it's a different playing field than like when you guys first came out and versus after you guys got censored and everything. Do you kind of want to give your opinion of why it's so important to keep some of these lifelines open why censorship is so harmful to the overall picture of everyone's freedom and liberty.
Absolutely, man. Well, as we've seen, it's a slippery slope. I mean, a lot of these big tech companies came out the gate saying, "Oh, we're here to protect you. We're here for your best interests. We're here to protect you from misinformation." And as it turns out, a lot of these topics, have actually turned out to be legitimate and real. And instead of actually allowing us to have an open conversation about some of these things, they put the boot down, and so it kind of skews the conversation. Now, we don't know when we're entering a post into the comment section what's been censored, what hasn't. So we don't know how much the conversation's already skewed towards the establishment's agenda and their own narratives. So, in my opinion, it's all about just diversifying different types of sources, different types of platforms. Obviously, we're on the legacy. Most of us are on these legacy social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And I'm not here to tell you to get off those completely. I think there's a place for those, especially when it comes to planting seeds and waking people up. But you also got to realize that you're going to have to walk on eggshells. You're stepping into a field of landmines, basically, and anything that you say, and even if you don't say it, even if it's just some type of jest or something that's has nuance involved to it, a conversation or a topic or a point that you're trying to make, that algorithm happens to scan, and there's one or two words that get triggered and it flags you. Well, guess what? There goes your reach. There goes your reputation with amongst your friends and the normies who happen to be, seeing your information. So there's a lot of implications here. And, again, I think one of the best solutions is to reach out, to create, communities, to migrate over to some of these alt media, social media platforms like Minds, like MeWe, like Telegram. And actually, I've seen you over on a few of these, Jacob. I think that's really smart to not put all your eggs in one basket, if you will. That's the big mistake that we made back in 2018 by putting majority, I'd say 90% of our eggs into the Facebook basket, which at the time it made sense, right? Let me remind you, this is during the internet golden age, and they're giving away reach like you wouldn't believe. And of course, I mean, if you're trying to create your own startup business or organization, you're going to have to go through Facebook to have that reach back then, because that was one of the only social media platforms available. But now the game's changed, and people are migrating off of Facebook. A lot of people are tired of their nonsense. So, head on over to Minds, head on over to Telegram. You'd be surprised. It's not just the, right-wing echo chamber that the mainstream media says that they are. And they're picking up momentum. You'll be able to build a decent-sized audience there, and you won't have to worry about the constant onslaught of censorship, which is it's very difficult. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and I've really turned to really liking a lot of these platforms. Like for video specifically, I really like Rumble and Odyssey, both for different reasons. But I don't feel trapped. I don't feel like I have to walk on those eggshells. And I mean, YouTube, that's Google, or Alphabet or whatever they call themselves now. And like, that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest tech overlord that we have now. And I mean, when I started this podcast, I didn't even bother with Facebook. I just said that there's no point, because anything I cover, it's going to get flagged. And then so I'm going to put any effort into Facebook at all, and then it's just going to get taken down. So there's just no point even. And got all the backups, so when they kick me off YouTube, I still got Rumble and Odyssey. So, try to migrate people over to these other platforms. And it's ultimately, I start looking at hate speech. Hate speech is just one of these things that the whole idea is absurd to me. But what really points out the absurdity to me is that, okay, so say if somebody says something racist, well, I want to know who these people are. I don't want them hiding. I want them to be able to freely speak so I know who they are. And then I want to be able to chastise them for having such a backwards, terrible thought. Be able to educate them, try to get them away from that way of thinking. But if you have hate speech laws, that just drives it underground. So It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well said, man. And I feel like it doesn't make sense to a lot of us who, identify as being critical thinkers. It just, it's an appeal to the masses. I think it's an appeal to motion for these big tech entities to just completely wipe these types of organizations, these types of mindsets off. And I get it. It's kind of a liability. It doesn't necessarily make them look good. It's probably not great for their advertising and their advertisers as well. However, I'm right there with you because the more we push them away from some of these mainstream platforms, will look like the authorities, law enforcement, the people who are supposed to be kind of keeping an eye on these people, legally, mind you, they're going to push them more and more into the underground, more and more to places where they're not going to actually be able to access their conversations, see what their opinions are on certain things. And that's half the battle right now, right? Like we're currently in the info wars. And when you're in the info wars, you have to know what your opponents are capable of. You have to know what they're thinking, what their strategies are, what's on their mind, how they're going to accomplish it. And by not allowing us to have that side of the story and not giving authorities that side of the story, well, who knows? It could be a mixed bag. They could be spying on people with various means. Who knows? But even still, I think it is a very dangerous president, and yeah, it's not a good thing. Certainly for the bastion of free speech, which none of these big tech companies necessarily are, but I think there is value there, even if it is some of the most vile and irreprehensible speech, that we don't want to necessarily acknowledge. There's still some value there into being able to determine and understand what these people are thinking and what they're capable of.
Well, it just makes sense to me, and I know a lot of other people, maybe not everybody, but it makes sense to be able to confront these ideas. Like if our ideas are so great, then we should have no problem defeating and confronting these terrible ideas. So
Sure.
that's how that's how I view it. And I don't know, maybe you see things this way as well, but hopping on Twitter, you would believe the opposite. Like the Twitter sphere is definitely a economy and a world unto its own. That's where the world where hate speech actually exists, where you could have hate speech laws. Do you kind of want to talk about Twitter itself, because it's such a dominating culture? I mean, people cite it as official sources on legacy media. World leaders use it and everything, but yet it's like a really tiny social media, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the world.
Yeah, this is true. This is very true. And I mean, yeah, even in regards to being like one of the bigger social media platforms, I mean, it is in the sense that it's accepted by the establishment, but it doesn't really have even a same fraction of the same users that Facebook does. But you're right. I think the Twitterverse has kind of taken on its own world, and I think, yeah, I don't have a ton to say on this, but you're right. Like, I think you're absolutely right. It seems like everybody has an opinion on there. It's always these gotcha moments, that trying to dunk on your political opponents. And of course, that's normal, that's natural, and that in fact that's what we were just saying we would prefer over the opposite. But it does become a bit of a toxic cesspool, and even though they try to moderate it as far as like certain words, there's still a lot of people that sling their own version of hate, and it's just camouflaged a little bit more effectively and efficiently, I would say. And not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I think if you're being respectful at least and trying to convey a point, then sure, like have at it. But yeah, I'm still relatively new to the Twitter universe. It is much more difficult, I should say, than other platforms to really grow a following, because I think in some ways it is a bit more intellectual. You don't have to, you can't just grow an audience with memes. You can't just grow an audience with video or whatever. You can, but to a certain extent, right? And
Yeah.
being a big meme guy myself, I really had to take note of, the different types of challenges when it comes to Twitter, because it's different. It's very different from the other platforms that are out there.
It is. I'm pretty new to it as well. I started a page for the podcast. I keep trying to get banned. I see all of the people I follow and all of my friends and everything, get 7-day, 30-day bans and stuff. And I don't know what it takes, but I just can't do it for some reason. And, I tried memes, videos, really, you build the audience through interacting with other people's posts. Like that's really where you get the followers, when other people can see what you're saying. But like posting on your own page, unless you have 100,000 followers, it doesn't really matter what you post, for the most part. So what exactly is the Thought Project and Police the Police been up to recently with the culture that we live in now? What have you guys been up to? What's the big stuff going on?
We've more or less stuck to our guns. I've noticed over the past few years, particularly since the MAGA movement, things have gotten way more polarized, and it's become much more fashionable in the sense that you're able to gain a lot bigger of a following and grow a lot bigger of an audience if you're directly attacking your political opponents. Now, occasionally we'll do that, right? If the left or the right needs to be called out. But for the most part, we've stuck to our guns. We've really tried to focus on the initiation of violence, really tried to look at the injustice from the drug war, from police brutality, police violence. So, in a lot of ways, the Free Thought Project and Police to Police hasn't really changed. We have tried to evolve with some of the templates and formats that we put out this type of content, but at the same time, we're not here to try to divide people. We've never been. We've always been trying to be the entity that highlights the positive, that tries to bring people together, that shows both sides of the equation and how they kind of overlap. And I think that's been probably our main focus. Of course, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we've just been trying to rebuild. At one point, we had 7 writers working for us. We had 3 people on our social media team making memes, videos. I want to get back to that. I want to be a formidable force within the independent journalism movement. It's just really challenging because, as we both have mentioned now, the scene has changed. The movement has changed. It's much more saturated now. There's this whole new wave of MAGA, Trump supporters that kind of hit the scene, and they have kind of their own liberty influence. They have kind of their own ideas on liberty. And then the COVID movement, the whole COVID thing happened, and there's a whole medical freedom movement that kind of took up arms as well in this whole thing. And so somewhere in that mix, we're still trying to do our own thing, still trying to kind of get some clicks, some views, still trying to get some recognition, but the game has changed, and that, in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. I can't really complain about that. It just means we have more allies now talking about a lot of this information, but we're kind of just trying to still stay afloat and work our way to the top. So, we're working on various revenue streams. We're working on a kid's book, trying to teach them their rights. There's a few things, that we're trying to do kind of behind the scenes right now, but for the most part, the content's it's stayed on target with most of the stuff we've been focused on over the years.
One thing, I would say the culture is pretty saturated, right? Especially with liberty-based podcasts and stuff, I knew that going in, but at the same time, I think that actually allows for the market to balance itself out. Everyone is either going to drop off or they're going to find their place. And then they're going to build the audience that they need. That, everyone, depending on what content you put forth, is the audience you deserve, And I think it's going to overall lead to just better content. Everyone who's in the sphere, everyone who is actually still around, everyone who's coming up and coming now, it's just going to work out. It's going to be the free marketplace of ideas. And honestly, I love free market economics. And, so I'm excited to see where the Liberty content is going to be in the next couple of years, honestly. How did the MAGA community kind of embrace the Free Thought Project and Police the Police, because I know a lot of them are, like Back the Blue and Thin Blue Line people.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was a huge flood of Trump supporters that came our direction. If anything, it was people who maybe were in the Trump camp for a while. Yeah, happened to see some cops that were maybe doing some unscrupulous, things. And in fact, there was like a period towards the end of Trump's presidency where there was people protesting, and the cops actually pushed them back and were physical with them. And so they were like, oh, wow, like maybe the cops aren't on our side. So I feel like if anything, like maybe some of those people transitioned maybe over to us. But historically, we've had more growth. We've seen more success and reach when the president happens to be a Democrat. So I don't know. The right is just a little too I guess, entrenched into a lot of their positions. And not to say that the left isn't either, but when there is a president that's a Democrat, at least we have the right kind of overlapping on some of our ideas and some of our opinions, where that's very rare that the left kind of has that overlap with us. I mean, there is some, but there's not a ton. So I would say, if anything, it was a tough period for us. And I think those 4 years, especially 2 of them being when we are starting from literally scratch again, it could have been a little bit different if maybe Hillary Clinton won, let's say. In fact, I was prepared for Clinton to win. I had memes made, and, we were ready to send him out. And next thing I know, he won? Like, Trump? How did this happen? Because he wasn't the establishment candidate. But now we're starting to see a little bit more of the MAGA movement kind of move past this right-wing idolism or whatever. I don't even know if that's a word, just idolization. There we go. And I think they're starting to kind of be a little bit more based, a little more principled as far as their beliefs. They're kind of moving past the polarization, the pointing the fingers, and trying to really understand maybe some of their principles and where they stem from. And, there's no better place to do that than the world of libertarianism, specifically anarchism, I would say. So yeah, I think we've had some converts, not a whole lot. But, I would say if anything, it was probably more of an influx from people within, the COVID, all the COVID mandates and policies that were being dropped on people's heads like a brick. They were like, wait a second, like this seems way too authoritarian. Like, wait a second, this could happen in America. Like, wait a second, maybe I'm not a Democrat. Like, maybe I'm not a leftist. Maybe I need to figure out what's going on. And so I think maybe we were a catalyst opening the door to some of the people on the left during the past couple of years. And I would like to think that anyway. I think the Free Thought Project, if I may say so, the one thing that we excel at is kind of blurring the lines. People aren't necessarily sure if we're lefties, if we're on the right. I think people who are libertarians could probably identify that we're libertarians, but we try to do a good job of muddying the waters so people can't be polarized instantly just by looking at some of our information. They actually have to look at the information itself rather than the label that's attached to it. So I don't know. Like, I would say probably more lefties than people from the right.
Yeah, I would say that. When I first found you guys, and this was, before 2016, at first I was confused as well, but I was still kind of in that left-right paradigm. I was libertarian, but I was still trying to come out of that, realize that the left-right really is just completely made up. And like sometimes I would see something that would completely agree with me, and then other times I'm like, wait a second, and then it would challenge me, and that's really what made me stick with you guys. So, by the way, all links are in the episode description. Make sure and go check them out if you have not, because it's a great source for anything that they report on.
Thank you for. Oh yeah. I was just going to say thank you for saying that, man, because that's the goal. That is specifically exactly what we're trying to do, is like have some posts that you resonate with. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a no-brainer, but then we're going to throw something at you that you've never really quite comprehended or thought about. And let's be honest, like counterintuitive information is like how we evolve as humans, like questioning these things, the things that you think are crazy, like, oh, maybe if I think about it for a second. And backtrack and look at how all the dots connect, like,
Yep.
actually, maybe it's not that crazy to begin with. Maybe I was lied to, and
Yeah.
so thank you for saying that, man. That means a lot.
Yeah, well, in that, I would say specifically, Police the Police is what did that for me. Really, it was because I was never like a back the blue, thin blue line kind of a person, but I was more willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the police.
Sure.
Whereas in many times they shouldn't,
Yeah.
not to say they shouldn't, because there are good people, but I mean, there's good people that do everything. There's still good people in politics. It's just they are overshadowed by the people that have been there for 50 years, Joe Biden, you know? And so I think that's definitely what Police the Police did to me. Is like there actually is this whole group of unsavory people in police force in the police force all over the country, and ultimately all over the world as well. Um, so, how has your relationship with police officers kind of developed over the years doing Police the Police?
Um, as I had mentioned, I don't have a police record. I've never had any serious arrests. I've never had any specific issues with the police, never been brutalized or anything. So for me, I haven't had many relationships with police until I started Police to Police. And after that, there's been, I would say, several officers who have reached out to me who, as you could say, are some of the good ones, I guess. And we've formed relationships. They're just as interested in my opinion as I am of theirs. At least one or two of them are retired now, but there's certainly active police employees too who I'm friends with, and we both have a mutual respect. I have a mutual respect for them, not because they wear a costume and wear a badge, but because they're actually out there trying to make their community a better place. And hey, yeah, they might just turn a blind eye to somebody who has a little bit of cannabis in a state where it's still illegal or something. Like these are the types of cops, even though they do work for an institution that we don't specifically believe is valuable, or they work for an institution that we don't necessarily agree with. I still believe that these individuals have a good head on their shoulders and they're trying to do the right thing. And let me just backtrack a second ago. I don't mean invaluable in the sense that they don't provide a service to society. They do to a certain degree, but when it's something that is non-consensual, which is involuntary, which they extract our money, our tax dollars by force, by the initiation of force, it's hard to really quantitate what type, or quantify, I should say, what type of value they have in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in society. So I guess that's what I was trying to say. But yeah, there's good cops out there, and I think there's plenty of them who got into the profession with the right intention. Now, we could talk about the institution itself, and how that's something that I believe is, not exactly something to be desired in society. But at the same time, I do believe that individuals within these police departments are good people, a lot of them anyway, even though they're working for a criminal organization.
Yeah, it's like privateers, road pirates,
100%. Yes.
So yeah, let's dive into that just a little bit. What would you like to see as more of like a realistic reform? Because obviously there are some very big issues. Qualified immunity, at the top of my list. I can think of civil asset forfeiture. There's so many issues. So what's something you would like to see that's pretty realistic?
So yeah, let's just start by saying neither of those things would exist in a neighborhood, a community, a society where police were voluntarily paid for, and the communities, consensually, they actually consented for them to be there. So in my opinion, reform has been a lost cause. It has been for decades, if not more than a century now. In fact, one of the very first police brutality protests was in like the 1880s, the Haymarket riot, which was all about protesting police brutality back in the 1880s. And since then, we've been protesting endlessly. You could look through the decades, whether it be the civil rights movement or Rodney King in the 90s with the Watts riots and everything. up until Michael Brown in 2014, even as recent to George Floyd in 2020, we've been protesting, asking, begging for government to reform itself incrementally for decades now, and it hasn't gotten us anywhere. And a lot of people don't recognize or realize that law enforcement is just a service, right? I mean, it's not something that's it takes a genius or a rocket scientist to really understand. It's a service, and all services, anything that the government provides, whether it be a service or a product, these things are funded involuntarily through tax dollars. So I believe protection and security services, not police services, because these are two different things. Protection and security services could easily be something that the market provides by protection and security companies. And by doing so, we're going to ensure that there's higher quality. There's going to be more efficiency, more effectiveness. They're actually going to have incentive to improve, and they're actually going to be accountable, which none of those things right now exist in the current paradigm that we have with law enforcement. And now I know people are probably listening, well, that all sounds great. Like, how is that possible? Well, as I just mentioned, when police are funded by taxation, which is more or less involuntarily extracted tax dollars, they have zero incentive to be accountable, to be effective, to be efficient, or to ever improve. And this all boils down to an economic issue, okay, guys? I mean, I understand that racism is something that's prevalent, and I understand there's other aspects involved with police employees and the institution of law enforcement, but this all really boils down to being an economic issue. Now, once we start coming together in our communities and demanding that we have our own security and protection services, then we can voluntarily hire any of these entities that are out there who are actually providing the service that we find beneficial and valuable to our communities. So, for instance, my son's really young, but if I had like a 16-year-old son, just got his license, driving in our neighborhood, gets pulled over by one of these security protection agents, or whatever, and this agent decides to give him a hard time. He's questioning him. He pulls him out of the car. Maybe he pushes him around a little bit. Well, guess what? Now, because this is a company, a firm that we voluntarily funded, guess what? We could decide as a community, hey, look, like, he just pushed around and bullied my son. I no longer want to continue to voluntarily fund these people. All the community agrees, and guess what? That business, that company, that firm, they're out of there. You get somebody else in with a better reputation. Now we're heading towards the age of accountability, right? I mean, that's pretty safe to say, with review systems, all the different ways to keep organizations, institutions accountable online. So the idea that we're just going to continue to allow police employees, the institution of law enforcement, to bully us, and we just hope that there's going to be some type of middleman that we could vote in every 2 to 4 years, and hope that they do some type of incremental reform within law enforcement in our city. I mean, that's just delusional, magical thinking, right? Like, we really need to take back control specifically of this one type of, quote, service into our communities. And by doing so, we're going to see a lot less violence. We're going to see maybe completely gone with the extortion, with the ticketing, with the arbitrary speed limits. I mean, all these things, right? So I understand this is a ways down the line, right? We're not going to just do this overnight, but we still kind of have to have the blueprints to have a macro view of what exactly it is that we're trying to strive for, what we want to be, where society can be peaceful and prosperous for everybody. So in my opinion, that's the path forward, is to kind of bring this back down to the community level, to the neighborhood level, and actually let people voluntarily choose who's going to be protecting them. I mean, this is one of the most important services that we could possibly have in society, and we're allowing the government to do it. And we've seen how big of a disaster that is with Uvalde just last month.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, that's just one small example. I could probably name 1,000.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you don't have to go far to find an example. And you don't only have to go to a source like, the Free Thought Project or Police the Police either. You can go to Legacy Media and find an example there as well, and you also don't have to go that far, find an example there. They are all over the place. I agree. So, I mean, I'm a anarcho-capitalist, so I want to see no government and all free market. And ultimately, I just want to see the penalties be financial and the incentive be financial. That seems to be how everything functions correctly. Like as of now, I would love to see any internal investigation have to come out of the what is it, the what police receive, not their bonuses, their after they retire. What is it, the
like a retirement pool or something.
yeah,
like
yeah,
sure.
like what
Right,
so
right.
any like shooting investigation has to come out of their retirement benefits.
Sure.
So they're going to be a little bit more worried about being a little trigger happy. Or there was recently a story of a woman police officer pulling out her gun instead of her taser. You're going to be a little bit more apt to go get some high stress training, or be more involved in the community so you actually know these people. There's going to be different incentives when it starts coming out of your retirement.
Sure.
Ultimately, I would love to see the abolition of like police officer or police forces. They work for the mayor. I don't like seeing that.
Sure.
I would much rather work closely with my sheriff's department, who are some of the most powerful people in your county. They can kick out the feds if they want. By the way, that is a good point to make sure and get out and vote for your sheriff and know who it is, because you vote them in. They're not appointed like police chiefs. So, it's just really interesting, and I think that's the other side of this, is that there is accountability on behalf of the citizens. You can't do nothing. You can't not know who your city councilmen are, your county commissioners, and then just go protest when something bad happens. I mean, you really do have to actually know these people and get involved. And if you don't like what they do, take part in the system. Everyone says democracy this. I always hear people crying democracy this, democracy that. Well, get involved with it before you start crying it.
Yeah. And you just mentioned you're anarcho-capitalist. I would say I'm in that same. I identify the same way, and I think there's a divide in the community, especially within like the libertarian anarchist community, where it's like, okay, do I vote or do I not vote? Like, do I continue to propel the system by engaging with it, or do I let it wither away and not vote, not participate? And this is a really big debate within the libertarian anarchist community. I mean, this is something I talk to our podcast guests about frequently, because I like to hear each and every person's opinion. And I think we're basically at the point where, as much as we want to strictly adhere to our principles and not participate whatsoever with the state, with government, I think we've gotten to a point now where it only makes sense to participate in defense of democracy and localism, and voting within your neighbor, your community, your city, trying to do what you can to influence those types of elections and get the right people in there. Now, on the federal level, that's a completely different story. Yep. I would say there's probably not a lot of influence or change that you're going to be able to facilitate. However,
not unless you got the money.
True, right. I heard Jeff Dice of the Mises Institute make this point a few months back, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. But we're basically allowing the left to co-op a lot of these positions within our yep. city governments, and it's showing. Like, it's starting to show. Like, a lot of our especially during COVID, a lot of our rights were taken away from us. And if we had specific people in those positions that were more freedom-minded, then there could have been some different outcomes. So I think absolutely it's important to engage with politics in your community, any type of local elections and voting. And, of course, 2 years ago, you wouldn't have heard me say that. But at this point, I think it's absolutely critical to do so because yeah. They are, and they're winning, so we need to kind of have at least one foot in the political realm as well. And that doesn't mean you can't keep doing things in the agorist world. You still can continue building your own business, or doing civil disobedience, or protesting, or 100 other things that are all kind of moving towards the same objective. But I'm right there with you. I think it's important.
Well, I think you have to strike some sort of a balance because these other people who do not have our best interests in mind are still going that route.
Right.
And I would say that not engaging in the system would hold more credence, except for the fact that the largest voting base are the people who don't vote. And it still leads to this. Now, the good part of that is the people who still engage in it are still going to be a pretty small people. So if the more people we can get in, the more we could actually influence. Because so few people actually vote, actually get involved.
Right.
So
Yeah.
right now is a good time to get involved.
Especially on the local level. Absolutely. And I think, for anybody who is listening right now, the Mises Caucus, the Mises guys have more or less kind of, I don't want to say hijacked, but they're nice. Yeah, I didn't even see that. They've kind of taken over the current iteration of the Libertarian Party, and that's exactly what they're working for. And I couldn't support them more. I mean, there's other people out there who are hardcore agorists, let's say, or whatever, and they're kind of giving them a hard time about it. But as far as I'm concerned, like this approach, this strategy has to be multi-pronged, and we're too late into the game to just be absolute purists when it comes to principle. And that was me for a while, but look, like COVID was a huge eye opener, I think, for a lot of people, not only our normie friends, but for people like us too, to realize just how far into this we are, and how much it's escalated in such a short period of time. And to add to that, I mean, I think it's still safe to say that there's a very possible, real likelihood that they're going to use that same COVID template for another, quote, emergency, whether it be the climate or some type of new virus. I mean, they already kind of half-assed tried to do the monkeypox thing, and that's not really taking hold. Of course, that's a whole different type of transmission and virus in itself. But I really do think they're just going to usher in using that same template, the same kind of fear mongering and control mechanisms that they did already. So, we have to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah, and I think they're, kind of like what Project Veritas kind of exposed with some of their leaks, a few months back, that it's most likely going to be climate related stuff as of now. Just a note about the Mises Caucus. So I was at LP National in Reno. Now is a good time to be involved in the party. I have not seen the energy in the Libertarian Party like that ever, at all. I'm a Mises Caucus state organizer, actually. So a lot of this stuff is what got me involved. COVID is what sent me over the edge and said I have to, only because the insatiable hunger for control and power is never going to be met. Like, they're just going to keep going and keep going until we've got communism on every level you could possibly think of. And I don't see it ending any other way.
I think things are escalating too, for several reasons. I think they recognize there was a huge backlash to a lot of the COVID policies. I think they're realizing the power of the internet. I think they deeply mistook how powerful the internet could be, and there's other aspects of it as well. I mean, the financial system, the fiat currency, the debt, the trillion. What are we at now? 32 trillion.
Yeah,
just about. Somewhere around there. So, I mean, it's absolutely insane. And I think they realize the house of cards is going to fall. So it's almost like things have been on warp speed, no pun intended. But, so it makes sense, and if you look at it from that lens, you're like, wow, like that would explain why we're having one crisis after another, like one emergency after another. And it's been, kind of been that way since 9/11 to a certain extent, whether it be, the war on terror, or, they were throwing out a bunch of different viruses throughout the past 10 years at us as well. I mean, there was H1N1, there was SARS, there was all these different, and it was almost like none of them really stuck, and then all of a sudden there was a novel coronavirus. Like, look at that one. Like, that one was the one that stuck. But I think there's reason for it. And once you realize your government has been hijacked and that they're trying to basically cash out as much as they can, before the house of cards goes down, then things start to make a lot more sense.
Yeah. So, I always think about the analogy. I was just talking to my mom and my wife about this earlier, about the analogy of, the frogs in the boiling water.
Mm.
And it seems like they just turned up the water a little too quickly. And now a vast majority of us notice that we're all being boiled alive. And while there's still some people sitting in the hot tub just being like, "Oh no, it's fine, get back in," and almost everyone is on the outside screaming in. It's like, "No, get out! You're being boiled alive." Um, I'm not
Conspiracy
so.
theory.
Yeah, I know, right? Where's my tinfoil?
You
Um,
extremist.
I know exactly. How dare I just want to be left alone? you know, but I don't think, if they tried to introduce lockdowns quite like that, that it would be the same. I don't think it would go down the same way at this point. How do you feel about that?
Well, it has in other countries. Of course, other countries don't have quite the same backbone of liberty that, the United States does. But yeah, it's a good question, man. Unfortunately, it's really hard to know what percentage is on our side, which percentage really woke up during this last, quote emergency. And yeah, I mean, I could see it kind of going both ways because there's still a lot of sleepwalkers out there. There's still a lot of people who, as you mentioned, are still sitting in the extremely hot water thinking, well, the fact checkers wouldn't lie to us, right? Like, MSNBC, they're my friends. Like, of course, like, I love Rachel Maddow. She's wonderful. Like, she speaks for me. She is me. Like, I identify with her.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a good question. I think if there was a big enough fear, and I think that's where they really succeeded with COVID because it was just
Yeah.
so far outside of most people's wheelhouse. It was like, wow, like there's this new virus that's emerging and it's deadly. It's spreading like crazy. And plus we also have these visual representations of our fear that we wear on our face. And so look, your friends are wearing them, your family are wearing them, everybody's wearing them. You probably should too. So, I mean, if the fear propaganda is strong enough, then anything's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like right there in the beginning of COVID, I was there with a huge swath of people. Like, what the hell is going on? I did think it was weird. I was just thinking back. I saw some screenshots from uh, the news around then when it wasn't a big deal. People were still going to Chinatown. Before all of this stuff really broke out here in the States. Like Nancy Pelosi went down to Chinatown and said, this is completely fine. Everyone come on down. Like, still huge groups of people. And what we know about it now, like, that wouldn't have been a big deal really anyways. Like, most people are going to get it and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But then just literally a couple of weeks later, it's like, oh, shut everything down. Like, we're done. Like, everyone stay home for 2 weeks, like, wipe down your groceries and just everything. And that's when I started just questioning things that didn't seem right. Like, shut everything down was my moment. It's like, wait a second, that's not right. That doesn't seem right to shut down the world's economy to everything.
And
And
we're still feeling the effects of it
yeah,
now.
and
Yeah.
I think we will for a very long time. And it was interesting because I was working in a warehouse at the time, a food warehouse, and we didn't stop. So I never stopped at all. I was, frontline worker, or I wasn't making TikToks though. So you know,
Yeah.
I wasn't being praised for going to work or whatever, like some of these nurses. But
Right. Choreographing dance routines.
yeah, I would probably get fired for that in the warehouse. But
Sure. The hell are
you
you
know,
guys doing?
yeah, exactly. Get back to work. And we were getting packages straight from China, and we would have to open up some of these boxes. I'm pretty sure I got it within the first couple of weeks before it was even a thing. I was sick for almost like 2 weeks because I had to go to work and keep working and everything. It was like a really bad cold, for me. I know it affected some other people worse and stuff, so I'm not going to say that that's all it was for everybody, but
Sure.
it's interesting to see how everyone behaved, because a lot of people bowed down and bent the knee that I didn't think would.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that it wouldn't happen quite the same, but it would have to be, I guess, presented in such a way, which is what makes me nervous about a lot of this nuclear preparation stuff coming out. I'm sure you saw the New York City PSA.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, we're in a proxy war with a nuclear state, playing around with NATO, which is just scary to me. How do you feel about a lot of what's going on in Eastern Europe?
Yeah. Well, I was just talking about this on Friday. I think a lot of this could have been avoided. I think, by sending billions upon billions over to Ukraine, this has only prolonged things, and, if anything, if we were actually the world's policemen, we would have been brokering a peace deal between, Ukraine and Russia. But I think this plays to a lot of our political interests, or the U.S.'s political interests. And by the way, nobody knows how many billions have been sent to Ukraine. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Go ahead. I mean,
No.
anybody who's listening to this, go ahead and just type into your favorite search engine, like, how many billions has the U.S. sent to Ukraine? No, nobody knows. There's different numbers. There's been several, different news stories about billions upon billions being sent. I know everybody was really upset about that 40 billion, but there's been a lot more sent since then. That to me seems really strange. And
Yeah.
also, there's White House officials on record basically saying it goes into a black hole once it hits Ukraine. Like, we have no idea where it goes. And, we've seen several times now U.S. weapons being sold out of the back of a truck, a pickup truck on the black market in Ukraine, U.S. Javelin missiles. So I think this is just all a big mess. I think the U.S. is obviously using it to their advantage politically, geopolitically, and there's plenty of useful idiots out there supporting it, and hey, look, I don't want to see war with any country. I don't want to see death and destruction by anybody, but I'm not going to just automatically point the finger at Russia just because the mainstream media told me to.
Yeah.
Because Stephen King wears a Ukraine flag hat on his, his head or whatever. I mean, there's just so many useful idiots out there who would buy this stuff hook, line, and sinker, and unfortunately, once again, they play up upon our fears, but they also play upon our empathy, because that's exactly what they've done with Ukraine. Like, Russia is the big bad bully. Ukraine, we're supposed to feel sorry for everybody involved, but at the same time, the Pandora Papers that were released, about a year and a half ago, they state that Ukraine actually has the most offshore accounts, out of any country. I mean, they have, so much illegal and dirty money being funneled there, and being washed through money laundering. And I mean, there's so much corruption in Ukraine, yet like the American public just buy it. They're like,
Yeah.
We need to support Ukraine. And it's a mess over there. And not to mention the whole Hunter Biden thing too, with the business dealings going on there, 10% for the big guy. I mean, this stuff is
Joe Biden bragging about it, about quid pro quo. I mean, blatantly.
Sure.
Like, come on. And we're supposed to believe that everything is on the up and up over there. Zelensky is not a corrupted politician, just like everyone else.
Right.
I mean, he has ties to the World Economic Forum, and God only knows how deep that goes.
Yeah. People like Ben Stiller taking the photo ops, and it's just like, man, like,
yeah,
you guys, I don't even know if I want to say it's like useful idiots anymore. Like, some of you people might be doing this intentionally because, I don't know, the State Department or something like taps you on the shoulder, like Matthew McConaughey style, like, we need your face. We need you to talk about gun control, Matthew. Like, okay, that was my hometown. Sure, I'll do it. I mean, like, who knows? That could be happening behind the scenes on a bunch of different levels, with these people advocating for this stuff. So, it's just frustrating, man. But at the same time, I guess it's to be expected. I mean, there's not a lot of critical thought in this country. There's not a lot of intellectual integrity. People are so polarized. If they identify with a team that supports Ukraine, then they're going to support Ukraine. So.
I thought it was so crazy, right? First couple of weeks this Ukraine thing was happening, and I saw Ukrainian flags being flown above state capitol buildings. And I was just like, this is like almost an invasion, you know? And it was a complete psyop, you know? It's
Sure.
just like yellow and blue everywhere you could think of.
Yeah.
And it was mind blowing to me. I'd never seen anything like that in my entire life to that extent. You know,
Sure.
it was crazy.
Yeah, the media pushed hard on it, man. And remember, when all the headlines look the same, you know, it's not news, it's advertising, you know. So,
Yeah.
I mean, people need to realize that these legacy medias aren't out here to do you any favors or to keep you informed. They're actually trying to tell you what to think, what to be outraged about. I know people listening to this know that, but I mean, it's just it should be common sense by now. But again, the critical thought, the critical thinking just isn't there.
Yeah. So there's one thing I wanted to bring up. I figured you would be a good person to see what you thought about this, and if you haven't already seen this. But it's Ghost in the Machine. I implore anyone who hasn't seen this to go watch all of it.
As the world watches and listens in horror, the peaceful pro-democracy demonstration in China comes to a violent and bloody end. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I don't know. Can you hear anything?
Wolves hiding nearby, whispering, do or die around me.
So we'll kind of just jump through this a little bit. But
You say you're
all world's a stage.
There is another very important phase of warfare. It has as its target. Its mission is to influence the thoughts of the enemy soldiers, and at the same time
Is expected and encouraged to study foreign languages and the social sciences such as history, economics, and sociology. He must have a broad and sympathetic understanding of all phases of human experience.
gripping at my side.
I thought this was just really interesting. They're all Ghosts in the Machine. An actual
these are the
advertisement
Psy-War soldiers.
for the psychological warfare aspect of the U.S. military. That was like a straight up advertisement for them.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I hadn't seen that yet. That probably explained the slickly edited video, and when you have endless millions to spend on these things, they always turn out looking pretty slick. But yeah, man. Wow. I mean, what's your take on that?
I think it's interesting. So this is kind of what I wanted to segue into is propaganda. The whole tagline to my show is to break your programming. That's why I'm here. My show is supposed to make you feel a little uncomfortable, make you question these things. So personally, I loved it. I thought it was well produced, but also it struck fear into me. Them being able to say certain things like, we're here, we're everywhere, we're ghosts. Like, we can influence, we can inspire. And it's like, how much of everything that we see, even a lot of these, conspiracies or anything, how much of this is just manufactured,
Sure.
And so it definitely, like I said, it struck fear into me because of that. And it's just like, you guys have a lot of power, but they're so blatant about it is what confuses me. So either they view us as so stupid that most people would see that and not be shaken at all, not be worried, and just be like, well, yeah, of course. Like, we have psychological warfare in the U.S. military. Like, that just, yeah, that seems right. That doesn't affect me, though. That doesn't mean that my views are manipulated. So,
Sure.
so kind of, what are you thinking after seeing something like that?
Well, I mean, many suggest that the QAnon movement was COINTELPRO too, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was just too many aspects that seemed a little too far-fetched, a little too much gravitating towards a specific idol, which, never is really going to pan out or play out very well. Yeah, being in this world for so long, nothing really surprises me anymore. I mean, oddly enough, like I've talked to a couple friends about the new Top Gun movie, and they're like, "Oh, it was great." And I was like, "Well, the Department of Defense like funded half of it, right? It was like mostly propaganda." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, like really? I had no idea."
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've been doing this for a while now, and they even did it for the first Top Gun. In fact, I think
Yeah.
they had recruiting booths outside of the theater, if I remember correctly, for the first Top Gun. And that's,
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not doing it now because they're so desperate. The military recruitment is dropped significantly. But yeah, man, this is part of the game, and that's why I say, we're in the info wars, and as much as I don't want to give Alex Jones a shout out, like, he was right. I mean, he was right, 10, 15
Yeah.
years ago when he came up with that name. We are in the information wars. There's still a large segment of the population that doesn't realize that. But yeah, these people have a hand in just about every single thing that influences us in one form or another. That's not me being completely hyperbolic. I mean, this is just the state of the world and reality that we're in. Um, whether it be Hollywood, and the programming that goes in, as I was just mentioning, the Department of Defense, help fund some of the Top Gun movie. I mean, there's on the Free Thought Project, there's an entire list of different movies that have been funded by the government, Department of Defense. So I think it's scary in the sense that you always have to double question and double think everything that you believe to be real, everything that you
Yeah.
believe to be truth. But I think it's better to know it than to not, and to know that it is important to never give that inch to uncertainty, to always double check, to do your own research, to use your own discernment. That's the only way we're going to get through this mess, and sticking by and supporting people who are in your camp, who are, ideologically in the same boat as you. And of course, that's not always going to be the answer and the solution, but right now, trying to make sense of this crazy world that we're in, it's about the best we could do,
Yeah.
So,
So what's a couple of things that you do to kind of keep an eye out for just like straight propaganda? A couple of things that might tip you off, like while you're reading something mainstream media, always it's a good rule of thumb to just assume it's bullshit coming from legacy media.
sure.
However, what's a couple of things that would tip you off that you're reading it and saying, okay, yeah, this is an advertisement, or this is there's more to this story than what they're saying.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's funny because we were just listening to something a couple days ago, and I was like, "You hear that? Like, that's straight up propaganda." When they tell you something, when they straight up tell you how it is, what it is, they don't allow any room for subjective opinion. That a lot of times that's going to be a red flag. I don't know if I have any specific bullet points on this one. I wish I did, and I probably should. But I think the more you get into this stuff, the more you just develop your own sense of discernment. The more it will just pop out like a huge red flag. Your spidey sense will tingle. It just doesn't feel right to you, and that's when you double check sources. That's when you try to look for sources on the topic that are going to give you a straight take on it. I'll say right now, everybody has a bias, right? Including the Free Thought Project, including myself. Every single form of information exchange has a bias to it. Even the ones that tell you they're objective, even the ones that are mainstream. There's a lot of these big mainstream entities, CBS, NBC, ABC. Oh, we're objective news. No, you're not. Okay, yeah. Everybody has a bias. Okay, everybody has internal history that they can't deprogram out of. We all have our own experiences and histories. So these things are going to, lead us to certain beliefs, lead us to believing certain types of information without double checking it. But it's up to us to always, always, always double check, confirm things before we share it. And I think that's one of the main things I would say. I don't know if I have any preventative measures, but I would say in hopes of people actually trying to embrace intellectual integrity, before you send something out, before you reshare, retweet something, just take a quick second to Google it. Maybe don't even use Google. In fact, let's try not to. Use Start Page or
Quant.
Or Presearch. That's another good one.
Presearch is great.
.io. Go from there and do your own research. Find the sources. Find James Corbett. A lot of these people, Tom Woods, they're going to give you this. They're straight shooters. They're out here trying to. They're on Team Liberty. They're on Team Peace, right? And it's authenticity repeated that creates trust. And these people are authentic. These are the people who don't have any horse in the race. They're not doing it to win over $1 million contract or appease lobbyists or whatever. They're out here because they want to see liberty in our lifetimes or in our kids' lifetimes. So, man, if I had a little bit more time to prepare on that one, I'd probably have a better answer. But off the top of my head, maybe I gave a little bit of value there, but that's a tough one.
No, I think that's a great answer. It is a hard thing. How do we combat propaganda? It's a really multifaceted question.
Sure.
One thing I will point out to anybody is that if you're reading a news story and the only thing that all their hyperlinks link to, the only thing, like, for instance, the SPLC, known propaganda, all they link to is just other articles on their site. That's it. And that's fine if you link to your site, obviously. But eventually you've got to be able to dig those hyperlinks that will link to actually something substantial.
Sure.
And if a site will only link to their links and that's it, nothing else, it's most likely bullshit. That's it. It's just really interesting. Organizations such as the SPLC, they've been releasing a lot of hit pieces on the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party recently. So it seems like we're doing something right,
Sure.
recently.
Yeah.
Finally, for once,
You make a good point, man. I think there's, again, going back to this lack of critical thought thing, I think there's a big disconnect with people online not understanding what an argument is, okay? And once you start to actually understand what an argument is and not just a word salad of big words that sounds like it's somewhat smart and therefore you're convinced, okay? No, you actually need to have an argument, and an argument should be the only thing that ever persuades you to thinking in a different way, okay? And an argument consists of reason, logic, and evidence. And if both those three things are missing, then you're probably just dealing with somebody who is, hyperbolic, somebody who's trying to sensationalize their opinion. And don't get me wrong, we all have our opinions. That's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're allowed to have your opinions. But if you have a specific truth claim about a topic or an incident, you're going to have to provide an argument based on reason, logic, and evidence. And I think once you start to kind of understand that and understand what that looks like, then deciphering propaganda is much easier, because there's so many people out there that are persuaded just by, a few big words that have a lot of conviction behind it.
Yeah.
And that's great and all. Like, don't get me wrong, you're allowed to have your opinion, but if you're trying to convince me to believe a specific truth claim, then look, you're going to have to bring some evidence. You're going to have some substance. And there's still just such a profoundly large amount of people on the internet that just don't get that concept.
Yeah. Bring receipts, I believe, is
Sure.
what the kids say now.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
It's that kind of makes me segue into the last little bit, and I think we'll start kind of wrapping up on this topic, is education. I believe it to be the civil rights issue of our time period is education, is ending government schools. They are not public schools. That's not what they are. They are government schools, which pumps us full of propaganda. So how do you feel about the schooling issue?
Yeah, it's I think you hit the nail on the head. You're absolutely correct. To me, in my experience, it was a place that bred conformity and collectivism, and I think both of those things are very dangerous for people who aren't also given the skill of critical thought. But it works out perfect for the establishment. It works out perfectly for the ruling class, of course, and some would even argue that that was the intention behind government schools. But I would say, yeah, get your kids out of the camps. That's what Sal Mayweather, Sal the Agorist. I mean, that's what he always says. Get your kids out of the camps. I quote him on that almost weekly, because that's exactly what they are. They're indoctrination, re-education camps for your kids. And you're going to see a huge change in personality from your children the longer that they go to these public schools. Now, Michael Malice points out the only time that people ever have a physical interaction or altercation in their lives is at public schools. And I think that's pretty damn accurate, like I've never, outside of my time in public schools, I've never had any type of physical altercation. So, I believe that education starts at home. I'm a big proponent of, homeschooling, a big proponent of, peaceful parenting. And I mentioned earlier, I have a almost 3-year-old and I have nearly a 1-year-old now. And trust me, it's not easy. It's not easy. It takes a lot of patience. It requires a lot of discipline on my behalf and my partner's behalf. But this is the future. This is the way forward. Okay, guys, like this is the only way we're going to create a society that isn't a million tiny little authoritarians, and of Karens and Kevins trying to tell us what to do with our own lives. This needs to be very much, pointed to and highlighted in the freedom community and movement. I don't think there's enough people talking about peaceful parenting, but to me, that's where it starts, and if obviously that's where it starts. A lot of people don't have, the funding to put their kids into private schools. If that's the case, try to do home pods. That's kind of a newer, more recent phenomenon since the COVID thing, which, it's, for people who aren't familiar, you just put your kids with maybe 5-10 other kids within your neighborhood, and maybe there's an ex-teacher in the neighborhood that used to work at a Montessori school or a Waldorf school or something like that, and you guys all privately pay her. They have different curriculums for the kids and everything, and that's one workaround from the public schooling. And of course, there's always unschooling as well, which is basically not any real dedicated time towards education, and basically just teaching kids as they grow up and learn when they show interest in certain things. And some people say that actually facilitates more interest and growth from children. So all these things are probably more advantageous than sending your kids to propaganda camps and really allowing the system and their peers and the establishment to propagandize them and conform them to collectivism.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to hearing anyone's story who actually had a good time going through public school. I sure as hell didn't. It was miserable, of course I had fun with my friends, but that's not what I'm talking about,
Sure.
Everyone has fun with their friends. I didn't receive a great education. It was standard education, which I'm not even sure, but it's not a good education, Right. I learned way more outside of school than I ever did in. And the fact that, somebody could get in trouble for not going to school, and if you're young enough, your parents get in trouble for you not being there, that seems weird to me. Like you'll receive a fine or could possibly end up doing jail time for your kid not being in school. That seems weird to me.
Absolutely.
There's all kinds of issues with it. The treatment, especially in any resource class, and kids end up in resource class who don't have any special needs, and even the ones that do, they get terrible treatment. These are teachers. They're not people meant or trained to deal with whatever ailment somebody has, and people get frustrated and stuff, and that's just not a healthy environment. I've heard horror stories,
Sure.
as we all have. And yeah, homeschooling isn't the solution for everybody. I get that. You could do pod learning, like you were saying. Other families in your neighborhood, you get together and you create a pool, and all of the parents get to interview the teachers, and you all decide where the kids actually get to set up school, or you can do homeschooling where everyone kind of trades off what they teach, and there are solutions if you don't want to put your kid in public school. There is a great documentary I recommend to everybody. It's a PBS documentary, and it's called School Inc. And you can find it on YouTube, several other places. Just search School Inc. PBS documentary, and it will come right up. You'll see a playlist with all of them come up. The gentleman who had made the documentary actually died before he was able to see it all the way through. But they go through school across the entire world, and there's private schooling over in India where $1 a month is what these people pay in some of the most impoverished places. So I have a hard time believing our country could not find a solution to take kids out of government schools. I don't believe that lie.
Yeah, I hear you, man. If there's a will, there's a way, and that's a perfect example, especially if in different countries they're making it happen, and there needs to be. This is a big one, and you're absolutely right. And even with our work, we should probably target and focus on it more, because this really is the gateway, in many ways, to statism, and believing that the government is the only resource for any type of social change. Believing that, courts and police and all these things are just a monopoly, and that's the only option that we have. That's literally where most adults in this country are at right now. You talk about police accountability, and they'll tell you, well, we need to have police. And it's like, well, yes, of course, like there needs to be some kind of security and protection services, but not by a monopoly. Don't you remember learning that part in school? Like, monopolies aren't good, regardless of who runs them, whether private entities or government entities, you know, so. But yeah, man, I think that's probably one of the biggest things we could do, probably right up there with peaceful parenting. And I would love to see more of a push by libertarians in that regard. Now, there are some resources, the Ron Paul home curriculum, that from what I've heard is actually pretty awesome. There's the Tuttle Twins books, and these aren't like huge resources, obviously, because there's not a huge market so far that we've created for libertarian children. But John Taylor Gatto, David Rodriguez, both of those guys. David Rodriguez is actually still living. He's an activist, anarchist activist, but he does a lot of work within that realm as well, with homeschooling and unschooling kids. So definitely research him. And John Taylor Gatto is deceased, of course, but he was like one of the pioneers and founders of trying to think outside of the box of public education. But yeah, man, you're absolutely right. That's something that we need to change. And, just like we were talking about earlier, how the market creates and change, that's a huge opportunity just waiting for any, libertarians that have a fire under their ass that really want to facilitate some change in our movement. Focus on schooling. Like, I think there's a huge market there available.
Well, and there's a perfect opportunity to make a lot of money right there.
Yep.
We need good, sustainable jobs right now. And you could start accepting something like gold and silver bullion for payment, and, get out of that fiat currency, start accepting some gold backs or whatever, and actually get paid value instead of just debt.
Sure.
So what does Jason have going on? What do you have coming up coming down the pipeline? What does Free Thought Project have coming up? And just let everyone know what you're doing, what you hope to do.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. So it's only been probably about a year or two now that I've really put myself into the public eye, and I've always tried to just stay behind the camera, behind the scenes with the Free Thought Project, because I really wanted this work to speak volumes and to do the work. But unfortunately, it seems that people really connect with this thing, your face, and they really want to connect with an individual and a person behind the scenes. So I've really stepped more into that role over the past year or two now, and it's not exactly something that I love, but I've gotten some support, and I certainly appreciate that. So, yes, come support me over at Jason Bassler1 at Twitter, or on Twitter, I should say, and jason.e.bassler on Instagram. Both of those have been fairly good for me. The Instagram specifically has really been taken off, and I've seen a lot of support from people. Of course, we're going to keep doing our thing with the Free Thought Project. As I mentioned, we're working on a child's book right now, children's book between like the ages of 8 and 12, and just trying to, as we were talking about just a few minutes ago, just really try to give the kids some tools of their own, away from the propaganda, from the government propaganda, and let them know that cops aren't necessarily your friends, and let them know their rights, So definitely keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, we're just keeping our heads down, trying to rebuild, trying to kind of get back some of our team. We had a solid team there for about 3 years, and I'd love to get back to that. I would love to start doing some mini documentaries and more video content. But we need your help, guys. We need some support. We need some financial stability. So please go to thefreethoughtproject.com. At the top there, you'll see a way to support us, donations or subscriptions. We have a subscription every month. And that's actually best for us because then we can kind of gauge how much income we have coming in, and we can hire more people. And maybe Jacob's looking for a job. We can bring him on as well.
Oh, yeah.
But, hopefully someday we'll get back to that. And otherwise, we're just going to keep doing this work and kicking ass and hopefully create a free society for our kids.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, right? Is really just to free everybody. I just want to live peacefully. I want to be able to actually own my land, grow my own food, hang out with my friends, have a good time. I want to have to not worry about the things that I'm worrying about, if that means that I worry about them so my children and grandchildren don't have to, so be it. I'll bear that burden so they don't have to. Also, I really started this podcast wanting to, I had this thought of, when my kids or grandkids look up at me and, say, what did you do? I want to have an answer to say I did something. I don't want to be embarrassed saying, well, I just stood by and did nothing, I actually fought for them, tried to do something for them. So really, I implore everyone, I don't think it really matters how you get involved. It just matters that you do get involved. So, I gotta say, thank you so much for doing this. This was great. Like I said, I've been following you guys for a long time, and so it was a great honor to get you on. You and your team, anybody, are always welcome on my platform. Any platform I have, you guys are always welcome to come on for anything. So let me know when you got that book coming out, and we'll do a highlight of the book. That sounds awesome.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, appreciate no problem. And everyone else, like I said before at the start of this, I got a strike on my YouTube channel, so make sure and follow me. Odyssey, Rumble are the two other video platforms. Eventually, down the pipeline, we will have our own servers at some point, so we will be able to host our own video. That is in the works at some point, but until then, we got to use everyone else. Otherwise, go to risetoliberty.com/links, LINKS. That's everywhere you can find us. Instagram, Twitter, all major audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher. Pod Addict apparently is really big for some reason. I have a lot of listeners on there. So, thanks again, Jason, and thanks for everyone else watching. It was a great time, and until next time, stay free, my friend.